Tim?
Boy, am I glad you guys sent the email out. I had next Monday locked and until the email came, I was like, oh my gosh.
So did I. I was a wreck. I was a mess. I said I to thank you, Ryan, for setting me straight.
If this is the only people in here, they'll at least go sit closer to the. It's a weirdo all the way down here.
There's Hannah and Paul. Hey, can you guys hear us?
Yep. Hi, guys.
Hello, everybody. Sorry, I got kids today, so they may interrupt, and I'll do my best.
No problem.
Life
Same
happens.
boat, baby.
Aw.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh. It's dinner time, snack time. In here.
That's right.
Maybe I'll just cue.
You approve both minutes at the same time? Or is it?
Good idea. Yeah, I think you can do it on one motion. Just ask, review of both.
I move to approve the minutes from both months.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. But that's the, yeah.
Yep.
Look at that, 59.
I'm gonna test. See if this works.
Oh, and Marlene isn't
There
going
we
to
go.
be able to join us.
Why are we here on a Seahawk Thursday?
All right. We
We'll
released,
address the issue in the room.
Meeting adjourned.
we released,
Go.
to be quick, I would say, yeah, our data cultural calendar. We released our schedule before the Seahawks, did,
Actually, that's Thursday.
unfortunately.
It's not that bad.
Yeah, fair question.
Good. All right.
I think we're ready, yeah.
It is 7 o'clock. As chair, I'll call this September 25th, 2025 meeting of the Issaquah Parks Board to order. To start, we will do roll call. I'll say your name. Please say here or present. Brian Olson, here. David Liu,
Sorry, just got here.
perfect.
Present.
Katie Bell,
Present.
thank you. Chris Kovac, excused absent.
Excused. Yeah.
Tim Motley,
Usually he jumps online.
Anna Novakovic.
Here.
Thank you. Diana Wren,
Present.
Jana Takushi,
Excuse me.
excused. Marlene Waxy,
Excused.
Paul Adair,
Here.
Martha Gintner,
Here.
Jeffrey Newell.
Here.
Thank you. Do we have a quorum? I do.
Yep.
Has everybody had a chance to review both sets of minutes from the June 23rd and July 28th park tour board meetings? Does anybody have any corrections or edits? Then if there are no corrections, does anybody like to make a motion to approve both minutes?
I move to approve both sets of minutes.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. With no corrections, on behalf of the board, the minutes are approved. Is anyone present online for public comment?
Double check. No.
No, not on.
I do know we had some emailed in comments, which are part of the slide, the last bullet point. If I understand the slide correctly.
Yeah, and if you would like, we can have that email be part of the record,
Yeah, that'd be great.
part of the minutes as public comment.
Thank you. Okay. We can move on to regular business. I think the first thing on our list is the urban forestry program update.
I can do that super fast. Absolutely, Dan. Thank you, Dan Hance, our urban forest supervisors here. Thanks so much, along with urban forest program updates with the adoption of the management plan earlier this year. Dan's also here to give I think a timely update on our heritage tree program. Those you may recall, about a year and a half ago, we came and had a series of conversations with you all about the need to update the heritage tree program. We're not here tonight to provide a draft or a proposal of the heritage tree program. We just thought with enough new park board members this year, it'd be worth just a reminder of what that program is, what our intent is. As Asante comes back this fall, as Dan is back, we're planning on bringing a draft to you in November. So really meant to just be an update and some questions and discussion tonight. So thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you all for having me tonight. Again, my name is Dan Hintz. I'm the urban forest supervisor. I know I've met most of you, but not quite everyone, but I've been in this role for 2.5 years. It's was a newly created role at the time. So really great to see the city and within our Parks and Community Services Department and investing in our urban forests and all the great benefits that our trees provide, but also, some of the challenges and responsibilities as it relates to tree risk, tree management, and tree care. So this presentation, Robin, if you want to go to the next slide, please, is going to provide some for folks that That's okay.
It's still back going.
Yeah.
There. So I turn it off there. I can't advance it. Brilliant.
Oh, there we go.
I'm used to.
So Robin, if you wouldn't mind going one up or one back, not expecting anyone to read through all of this, but if people are interested, I did bring a couple printed copies if you want to kind of look through this or hold on to this. But as Jeff mentioned, kind of as I came on our first, when I first came on, being a new program, new position, really kind of building the foundation, and really in urban forestry, having a management plan. This is kind of intended to be a 10-year roadmap to how we kind of build and develop this urban forestry program. And it's certainly a lot of work in our parks department, but working cross departments with public works, planning, sustainability. And we'll essentially give just a couple slide overview of what this plan looks like. So I know for some folks, this will be review. You saw this in development through most of 2024 into adoption in February of 2025. But essentially the plan is in 3 sections. So Robin, if you don't mind going ahead one. Current conditions, essentially what we have. It looks like this might be loading. I apologize, a bunch of stuff at a time here. So if you just want to
Just do some clicks through it.
scroll a couple scrolls through it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So if you just want to do all of them, I think, my bad. So the first section, like I said, it's kind of what we have. So that's kind of looking at the current composition. I'll say one of the other foundational piece of any urban forestry programs is public tree inventory. So that's something I'll talk about in a few slides in terms of implementation of this plan. Having essentially the roadmap, but then a really good understanding of what we have. So as part of our Green Issaquah implementation plan, we had some composition analysis done for our 1,500 plus acres of open spaces, but we don't really have that nuanced detail for, individual park trees and right-of-way trees. And that's where I think there's a lot of room for a growth and kind of information there as it relates to our urban forest and in more of the truly built environment. So looking at management programs, existing and kind of ones that we need to build towards, alignment with existing plans. So you've heard a lot of Issaquah Climate Action Plan or 55% tree canopy goal. Some of the overlaps that we have with kind of transportation planning, obviously park system plan as well, creeks to peaks. So, kind of, this is kind of what that first section really looks like if you are wanting to flip through that. Sorry, I didn't bring more copies, but staff and community engagement, vulnerabilities, essentially what are the challenges we see both from a management point of view, but some things are a little more difficult to control, like obviously a changing climate, some of the pests and diseases that might be associated with that. And then kind of an evaluation or audit that we can kind of have currently and kind of do systematically, on like 2-year intervals is what we're shooting for in the plan using a U.S. Forest Service urban forest audit. So Robert, if you want to hop to the next one. Thank you. So then it gets into the vision recommendations, kind of after what we have and, sort of setting up what we need. This is kind of getting into those recommendations. So you all helped workshop this a little bit, probably, gosh, like 1.5 years now, having kind of a high level vision for our urban forest. So I won't read it out loud, but that's kind of what's in italics on the top half of this slide. And then it's broken into 5 sections for recommendations, which include, goals, strategies, and priority actions. So that's, equitable and resilient canopy cover. That's really the forest, the trees itself. Like I said, we talk about that at a macro level in terms of, our overall canopy cover in the city, which is currently about 51%. We do have that 55% goal by 2035 in the climate action plan. But really getting into some of the kind of individual tree care, like I said, kind of how we're working across departments, working with our contractors, working with private residents to educate around, proper tree care and maintenance, and ideally trying to incentivize, improving canopy on private property, which I'll talk about our tree giveaway program that just launched last week. I have a slide for that here in just a little bit. Maintenance and management, that's where, I work out of our parks operations building. So really trying to, kind of ingrain best practices for tree care with our team there, which is really great that there's a lot of folks invested in that. We actually have another certified arborist on our parks operations team who's really kind of taken on some of this, Christy Bishop. And, trying to work more with public works as they're working around trees and sidewalks and some of the conflicts we have with infrastructure, and trying to just find the right balance where we can, with obviously needing to, improve some of those, kind of pieces of the built environment, but also trying to preserve, care for trees as best we can. The third one is really kind of getting into our code or our tree ordinances. So Title 18, which is our land use code, had a huge overhaul in 2023, and we're even going through another sort of revision of the tree code chapter in Title 18 currently. So that is something that is at this point kind of at the council stage that the Planning Policy Commission has really been kind of working on with our planning department. Funding's level of service is kind of how we get there, kind of what we're providing. And then the last one, something I'm very passionate about, is, that community education, engagement, and stewardship. And I'll probably leave it at that for now, because I'll have a couple slides in a bit touching on our Green Issaquah program and our Park Ranger program, which are big parts of that community and education and engagement. So lastly, on the next slide, Robin, is essentially how do we implement this? That's kind of where we get more into the strategies, priority actions, and how do we monitor? I kind of talked about the U.S. Forest Service audit. There's some of these high level goals around, like I said, tree canopy, getting a tree inventory and having a better understanding of the composition and, kind of what to prioritize planting, what to maybe pull back on. You maybe heard me talk about emerald ash borer as a preparedness plan, something that we're likely to see in the near future, and it's going to be a really big challenge for our ash population, but we don't have an exact idea of how large of a proportion that is of our urban canopy. So that's the type of data that we're really hoping to collect to make more informed decisions, more efficient decisions as it relates to managing our trees and urban forest.
And the ash borer, sorry, Dan, is a bug.
It's a pest. It burrows in, and then the larvae, as it comes out, feeds on the cambium, or the living layer of the bark, and essentially kills ash trees top down. So there's becoming better technology to stem inject trees to actually maybe prolong their life or kind of keep them going, but you have to catch it really early. So there's kind of an early detection process to this too. But it has been an estimated $4 billion of resource damages in the Midwest and East Coast from entire populations, where ash trees are a bigger part of their forest, but it's not insignificant here in terms of our native Oregon ash and then a lot of ornamental ash trees we plant in streets and parks. So looking at some implementation costs, supporting resources, and like I said, that evaluation, monitor, revise. So right now we're looking at this as a 10-year plan with potentially an update after that. And we were really not even quite finished with year 1, so still pretty early in that process. So and folks, if you have questions online or now, please just jump in. I'm happy, but this is kind of the transition from real high level what the urban forestry plan looks like, and a couple of the handouts here for at least the folks in person, and then getting into a few what we've kind of looked at as priority implementation items on the next few slides here. So we'll hop through those next. So I mentioned, one of the ideas is how do we incentivize tree canopy improvements on private property? I mean, we're pretty dang lucky in Issaquah to have almost 20% of our land mass in our public park system. And that actually doesn't include some of the other publicly managed lands like Lake Sammamish State Park or the bit of King County or DNR managed land within the city. So we are really fortunate to have that, but that still means 75% or at least 2/3 is in private land ownership. So how do we work with residents? Obviously, tree code is a big part of that, but how do we do that in maybe a more engaging, exciting, less regulatory way? And this has been a great partnership with the sustainability department. I'm not sure if any folks have met David Reedy, our manager, Stacey McKinstry. It's a really powerful 2-person team in our executive department. So sustainability team, I should say. And we're really kind of launching this and hoping to make this an annual event, but we're partnering with, as I mentioned, sustainability. 300 Trees is a great kind of grassroots nonprofit that popped up in Bellevue with their supporting tree giveaways with City of Bellevue, City of Redmond, and now Issaquah. And then Friends of Issaquah Salmon Hatchery has kind of been a late partner to this effort, which has been great. And I really like how they've kind of coined kind of the effort. They're working with us from canopy to curve. So they're looking at how tree canopy benefits stormwater and water quality, and ultimately how that is really critical for salmon. So they are working both with this tree giveaway program and also with Public Works on Adopt a Drain, which is working with folks in the neighborhoods to be keeping pollutants, leaves, all that stuff out of storm drains, and the benefits that provides for water quality. So we're looking to distribute 275 trees. This just launched last Friday, actually. So it's been really great getting daily updates from 300 Trees. They really do the back end application. We've been promoting it mainly to priority neighborhoods through a tree equity tool. So we identified about 9 census blocks in the city that have fairly significant summer heat disparity temperatures. So neighborhoods that all have 3.5 or 4 degree plus temperature differences because of lack of canopy, usually impervious surfaces. A lot of asphalt work, just, the sun kind of radiates and creates what you hear sometimes the term a heat island or heat island effect. So our initial outreach has not been huge in terms of citywide. We've been doing some targeted yard signs, a few email blasts with Issaquah Highlands Community Association. Essentially, a lot of the areas that have that lower canopy and the higher heat disparity are the Highlands, Old Town, and a little bit of Central Issaquah. This is geared towards residents in small organizations. We do have a definition for that, so we're not necessarily giving it away to, commercial properties or things like that. But we had a condominium on Issaquah Creek that just reached out to us and ordered 10 trees, which is great. But we are probably going to be ramping up the promotion of this over the next few weeks and ultimately have a giveaway event on November 15th at Pickering Barn. So really, really great way. We have some funding from sustainability, some funding from our team that's putting this together for that pickup event on November 15th. So if any of you are interested in a tree or know people, we do have a website. If you just search Issaquah Tree Giveaway, it's pretty easy to find, but you'll see it in more communications from the city here pretty soon.
If I could just reiterate, Dan, this program represents a really cool opportunity. We do so much tree planting. We plant thousands of trees a year. But this is a really cool opportunity for us, as Dan said, to help. We can't mandate planting trees on private property, but we want to incentivize and realize, as you said, those parcels and the compilation of those private parcels play a big role in canopy cover for Issaquah.
So I'll probably have a quick update on that in November in terms of we are already forming a map of where those trees are being ordered from. It's really neat to see some of the other results. We've given away somewhere around 20, not quite 25% of our trees. So not just in a few days. We're pretty optimistic we'll reach that number of 275 and hopefully maybe be able to grow that in future years. So one of the other planning efforts that I think is really important, and I'll admit this was something that I kind of nudged to include in our forest management plan. If folks aren't familiar, hopefully most people are, but Tradition Plateau is a very flat sort of part of Tiger Mountain, kind of just south of Interstate 90. You can see on that photo on the top there. A lot of people don't necessarily know the city has a lot of land up there that we manage. It is part of the Tradition Plateau Natural Resource Conservation Area. So meaning it is an area that's intended for, passive recreation, but really conservation long-term in terms of the forest resources up there. So one of the most amazing trees and locations on Tradition Plateau that's on city property is the big tree on the Roof Keys Big Tree Trail. So that's the photo on the bottom there. That is probably a 200+ year old growth Douglas fir tree. that is, 8-9 feet diameter. So as I mentioned, we have, 15 to 1,600 acres of forest and open space in our park system. Almost a quarter of that, if not a little bit more, is within the Tradition Plateau NRCA. So it's an area that we, if you're going by the canopy metric, it has a 91% tree canopy. Is like, oh, that's great. But this is an area that has had multiple generations of logging. It's had a lot of other impacts that have, essentially degraded the complexity or biodiversity of some of the forests, where we might have, let's say, a standard Douglas fir that's uniform age, uniform species from resulting from, logging in the 1980s. So we're really looking, this is probably even more of a 20 to 30 year kind of management plan, really focused on, kind of sounds like a buzz term, but ecological forestry. We're not looking at doing timber harvest for the sake of obviously selling timber. There could be recommendations around thinning areas for the health of the forest long term. You'll hear that term, ecological thinning. We're working with a group called Northwest Natural Resource Group that specializes, or a nonprofit that works up and down the Washington coast, in Oregon as well, specializes on ecological forestry. And they've done a lot of consulting work with Department of Natural Resources and several tribes based in Washington State. So really, really great group to be working with. And we're actually going to be kicking off that planning process here in about a week or two, which is really exciting. So really like kind of a better assessment of that 435 or so acres, and hopefully some good strategies around how we can continue to care and improve the forest health, and what is a really, kind of big contiguous forest there on the plateau and some of the slopes coming down to I-90.
Would you agree, Dan? I think this assessment's a good example of, when we talk about tree canopy, often canopy is talked about solely as volume. Like, the most important thing about canopy is volume, but what's really important is also the health and condition of the canopy. So though this has a great volume number, this assessment's really gonna help us ensure that the health of that canopy.
We heard, and I don't think Zach's on the park board anymore. I feel like there might have been other folks that were really kind of emphasizing understory species, wildlife, how we're controlling invasive species like holly and ivy. So it's looking at more than literally the, the top of the forest, the tree canopy, and as Jeff's saying, kind of that holistic approach to, both the different structures and levels of the forest and everything that interacts with that, especially kind of wildlife. And also, there's a lot of tribal interest in this in terms of, plants that are historically used for foraging or other, kind of cultural practices too. So that's definitely going to be kind of an element of the plan too. So once again, focusing on forest health and looking at kind of that 20 to 30 year time frame. So this kind of comes back to what I kind of already talked about a little bit. So I'll try to keep this pretty quick, and I know it's a text heavy slide. I'm working on a update to our canopy assessment. So when I talk about that current 51% tree canopy, that is with 2021 data. This uses satellite, essentially imagery, which usually lags 1 or 2 years. So even if we wanted 2025, it's probably not available yet. So we'll be updating this with 2023 data. We weren't necessarily planning on doing this soon after, having just done it as part of the forest management plan, but there is some custom geographies within the city that will really help inform some of the tree code updates. So essentially at the zoning level, at the neighborhood level, at the stormwater level, where we'll also have tree canopy assessed at those kind of various, like I said, custom geographies. Plus we'll have an updated citywide canopy cover number. So if folks are familiar, King Conservation District is a great quasi-governmental organization within King County that essentially supports the member jurisdictions, which are the cities like Issaquah. So we all pay taxes into that fund, and we essentially can ask that money back for conservation-related projects. So this is going to be a really small cost being leveraged across many member jurisdictions that are doing updates. So this saves us probably we're probably doing this at 20% of the cost if we had just contracted this out directly by ourselves. So it was just a great opportunity to do that and, kind of track how we're doing citywide. And like I said, at some of these levels, it relates to tree code too, and some stormwater management requirements we have through Department of Ecology. And then contrasting, like I said, the really two foundation.
Paul's got a question.
Yeah, sure, Paul.
Well, I was curious because you mentioned this update to the canopy coverage since you have 2021 data, and then it might be up to 2023 data. Will the bomb cyclone affect that at all? Like if it's that the canopy at all, since obviously there were a lot of trees lost in that, or is that not kind of negligible in terms of what this will tell you?
Gosh, Paul, that's such a good question. I've been asked that a few times, and my best answer is, partly TBD. I don't think we're talking like multiple percentage points. I'm thinking it's probably in the neighborhood of tenths of percentage points. Once again, 2023 will predate the storm, so it won't really give us the update there, but hopefully the next round we'll kind of see that, and that'll be interesting to see if we do see a little kind of blip there. It's just, yeah, it's hard to judge exactly. And places we lost trees might have had overhanging canopy, especially in our open spaces. I don't feel like there's giant canopy gaps in areas like Tradition Plateau, but certainly some of our developed parks and right of ways we have lost a significant amount of trees. So yeah, I try to do some math. Our GIS manager Brian Overman does some really, he started in the forestry field, does some really good analysis of he's the one that told me, he's like, yeah, Issaquah city limits probably have 250,000 trees. So we're talking a fraction of a percentage of trees lost. I mean, it's still significant. We're talking about several hundred trees lost in the built environment from the storm. But as it relates to the amount we have citywide, I don't think it's gigantic. So that's my best answer. Probably not percentage points, but maybe tenths of percent would be my best guess for what was lost there.
That's a great question, and I think your response, this canopy analysis isn't necessarily going to have the data to understand the effects of the bomb cyclone. It's going to need to be a later one.
Well, we're hoping to do this at minimum on 4-year intervals. Like I said, this is kind of jumping that a little bit, but it was a really great opportunity to do this with King Conservation District and kind of leverage some of the resources that they're pulling together from other cities in the county. And then they talked about the tree inventory. So this is something I'm working on with Jeff to kind of figure out. There's, fortunately, a lot of the funding for urban forestry comes through DNR's Community Forestry Assistance Program. A lot of their grant funding has been put on hold due to some of the state budget challenges, a little bit related to federal funding too. So we're trying to get a little creative, possibly working with King Conservation District, possibly working through our tree fund to see how we can kind of put together funding to at least do a first big initial phase for a tree inventory. So it's like I already said, foundational piece, unlike canopy assessment, it's data on individual trees. So that's going to be the species of tree, the size, usually the diameter, possibly the height, condition of trees. So kind of knowing, hey, are these trees young and really vigorous, or are these trees kind of on the tail end where we need to start thinking about replacement? And a huge tool for kind of prioritizing more proactive management versus sometimes it's the reactive management when we have storms, or we just get calls from neighbors that are concerned about trees, or we're just trying to catch up. So having this data will be a great public education tool, because if you look at other cities, big cities, but even Sammamish just published theirs, where you can actually be on a GIS map, walking along a sidewalk, click on a tree and, identify what it is. My dream is to also have management responsibility, because it's very tricky in the city. What is parks? What's public works? What is the adjacent landowner? So I'm always fine if people call me, and then I have to figure it out and kind of either be like, that's us or not. But the goal would be to have a publicly available map where, someone could click on it and kind of figure out who is at the HOA, what department in the city, and kind of have contacted. So like I said, that's a public education tool. And then a big part that I'm guessing maybe the park board's heard about, the asset management system, Cartograph. So really tracking materials, labor, equipment, hours towards tasks like mowing, tasks like prepping baseball fields. We want to be able to do that for tree work too. So that would be having this essentially inventory integrated with our asset management system, which is a software Cartograph, is definitely a big goal of the public tree inventory as well. And then I think, thanks, Robin. I believe 2 more slides on Green Issaquah and Park Board before a few wrapping up on heritage trees, as Jeff kind of prefaced earlier. So hopefully most folks on this call are familiar with our Green Issaquah program, but the Green Cities Network has been around for a couple decades. It started with Seattle, but there's 15 or so cities in this network that really the goal of it is engaging the community in hands-on stewardship and education around our natural areas and forested parks and open spaces. So that's Taylor Nichols pouring some wood chips there, Alex Anderson, our park ranger, and myself. That's kind of our small team. Taylor is our Green Issaquah volunteer coordinator. All 3 of us started similar times in the last 3 years, kind of building out, essentially a natural resource team within our parks department here. And just figured out to share some quick accomplishments on Green Issaquah. We've had 53 events to date. This is actually probably a little higher since I did the slide about a week ago. 2,000 volunteer hours. We've really been trying to focus on youth engagement. So we're actually really proud that a third of those hours have been from youth under 18. Forest stewards are dedicated recurring volunteers that kind of have like an adopted area model. So, we train them up. We try to find maybe a neighborhood park they live near, or maybe they're happy to travel and really take on sometimes that's just working independently or with partners, family, friends. But a lot of them have kind of taken on leading events on our behalf. We provide tools, we kind of help support. Often we're out there for the first few events, and more of our forest stewards are kind of running with that, where they're leading small events on behalf of the city in Green Issaquah. So that's been really great to see that expand here over the last few years, where we have like a really, really great cohort of forest stewards. And then we're really trying to build out the kind of environmental education too. So kind of knowing that pulling weeds, planting trees, dealing with blackberry is really physically tough and tedious. And there might be people that either just don't want to do that and want to engage in different ways, or just, physical abilities too can be challenging for some of that. So we're trying to provide a lot of educational events that still touch on a lot of the same kind of topics of work we're doing, but might be in a more casual setting like the classroom or a walk or hike or different tabling events. So we've been really, really proud that our small little team, leading on some great community partners, have led 30 plus education events, engaging with 400 people. And that doesn't even count some of our bigger events we table at, like the Sustainability Fair, our first annual Wildlife Coexistence Day we had back in June, where we probably had 300 or 400 people visit the city table, and about another dozen or so partners that were talking about wildlife that's local to the area and how we best, kind of coexist as neighbors, from, big bears down to salmon, down to, pollinators and snails and all sorts of small creatures too. So we're really looking at that really broadly as this kind of wildlife coexistence effort that's really led by our park ranger. Which will be the next slide. But the last plug I'll put on Green Issaquah is October 18th. We're going to celebrate our annual Green Issaquah Day at 3 sites. I love that Taylor this year at Confluence Park, we're doing trees and tots. So we're doing an event dedicated to families and young kids, 6 or so and under. It's not a hard rule, but that's about what we're shooting for. Then we'll have a project at our Miyawaki Forest, which has been another great project. That's maybe a whole other conversation for another time. And at the Anthology Open Space. So those are a lot of our big partners. Apologize for the acronyms of Mount Sound Greenway, Issaquah Trails Club, Trout Unlimited, Gibson Neck High School. We've been doing a lot of work with a couple interns there, which has been cool. And then we've had great engagement from Costco, REI, and more recently from Siemens. So, really engaging the general public, community groups, schools, and corporate groups is really kind of what the program does. So, Robin, the next one.
One more plug as we're transitioning, just Green Issaquah, great work by Dan, by Taylor, and by Alex. That program multiplies our efforts to deal with invasives and sort of the edges of our forests that are so vulnerable to becoming unhealthy in a hurry. And we've taken out volumes of invasives and really are transforming some key areas of our urban forest. So it's a huge success.
Thanks, Jeff. So yeah, always happy to chat more about that. And, if you ever have individuals or groups or businesses you're associated with, we're always happy to try to, put events together. So we're kind of transitioning into planting season, which people really love those type of projects too. So, but yeah, last I supervise our park ranger. This is Alex Anderson. Nice little shot we staged here recently at Confluence Park. He's like, I'm going to do headshot. But anyway, so I think it's important to kind of start with, Alex is not a commissioned ranger. He does not have any law, authority to write tickets or citations or obviously arrest anyone. We really focus on enforcement through education. So how do we enforce our park rules, our park code in a way that's try not to, be too wagging your finger, too, just kind of, hey, we're going to find you, we're going to charge you for this, and really kind of focus on, as Alex describes really well, the authority of the resource. That we all are, need to be stewards of these public lands. We are all invested in these. This is our public land, and how do we, educate why, hey, maybe these actions you're doing, maybe you're just not aware of the impacts that might have on salmon, as people are, still wanting to put their dogs in the stream, as salmon are migrating upstream right now, or just different examples like that. So that is really kind of the model we have. And another huge area of Alex's job is supporting our human services and the behavioral health team. So for our unhoused people in our park system, Alex is working on contacts, working with human services, and ultimately, depending how that moves along, we do post notice to vacates, and we are, get a little bit more strict about it, but we provide a lot of leeway, provide a lot of opportunity for resources, and Alex is really kind of at the front line of that with our behavioral health team as it relates to our parks and open spaces, and a lot of neighboring private properties where Alex is kind of the kind of first kind of contact there too, as we get calls or complaints about camps or dumps and things like that. So yeah, I forget exactly the amount he told me, I had it in the notes there, but Alex does track the amount of pounds of illegal dumping he pulls out of parks, which is not insignificant, but it's actually been really great to see that with this program in place, the large camps where just stuff overflows and just kind of piles up is not really the same problem we had even just 2 summers ago, or certainly in the past. So that number is actually going down in terms of these kind of large scale cleanups where we're just pulling truckloads of garbage and debris, from our open spaces. But it's still in the neighborhood of, hundreds of pounds of material that, Alex, and our team haul out and, keep out of our park system. 230 contacts is what he shared with me so far to date. So that might be things as simple as reminding people of, our unleash dog rules, to, like I said, wildlife education, to homeless, encampment contacts, all sorts of stuff that Alex is tracking through his parks enforcement map.
E-bikes.
Yes, e-bikes on our turf has been a problem.
E-motorcycle.
Yeah, yep. Those are harder to track down and make contacts, as you might imagine, but still, that has certainly something he's worked with a lot. And then a big part that Alex and I love working on together, like I said, I've already kind of talked about wildlife coexistence. This, I'll just say really quickly, started out as a program actually out of our Issaquah Middle Schools about a decade ago. And then Woodland Park Zoo came in, and they've been a huge partner as part of this. And we have a great series of wildlife trail cams throughout some of our parks and open spaces that catches amazing footage. And we love to share it for the sake of people just getting excited about animals and wildlife, but certainly through an educational lens of, how we best coexist in residential settings. So that's a lot of work with Recology, our service provider, on like bear cams and being smart about bird feeders and, your pets outside at certain times of day, certain times of year. And then the recreational setting too, where folks might just be nervous about going out because they know there's bears, cougars, and kind of how to educate, the likelihood of spotting them, what you do if you do actually happen to come across a big carnivore like that. So Alex regularly leads outdoor 101 hikes that really focus on that kind of basic education. And we've been doing more with our public works team, solid waste, person with public works on some of the residential trash stuff as it relates to wildlife too. So going to continue to host this annual Wildlife Coexistence Day in partnership with the Farmers Market, which has a great built-in audience, of course. And we kind of took over the meadow for the first Saturday in June and have had a really good turnout for it. Yeah, and then, kind of just tying back to the previous slide, leading educational, interpretive events, and really supporting Green Issaquah as well. I'll pause there for a second before we go to the next slide. Or Robin, if you would go to the next slide, which is kind of transitioning into heritage trees, and any kind of general questions, comments for the program, forest management plan, before we kind of dive into the specific program here for the last few slides.
Pretty thorough, Dan, as usual.
Thanks, Martha. Yeah, so a few of these slides you may have seen, because these are borrowed from, as Jeff mentioned, some folks that were with the park board, a year and a half or so ago, shortly after I came on. We had 2 great interns that did a lot of work capturing photos, capturing measurements of our 25 or so current heritage trees. But really just want to talk that, this is not an Issaquah specific program. These programs exist in a lot of cities across the country, even across the globe, really recognizing, trees for their significance in the community. So that's celebrating, educating around unique trees, trying to get people inspired to connect with, learn about, and hopefully care for some of these broader efforts that we've been talking about here for the first part of the conversation. So the program was developed initially in 2005. I believe it was to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of our Tree City USA status, which is a recognition from the Arbor Day Foundation that we've had for now 30 or so years running. And like I said, yeah, trees that promote identification and recognition of trees that have that unique character of Issaquah. Pretty vague, but at the same time, we have some criteria for that we'll have in a new slide here. But we initiated a review, an update of the heritage tree program at the park board that stalled a little bit, kind of focused on trying to complete and adopt the forest management plan. And now, as Jeff said, this is kind of a little tease preview before maybe diving into this a little bit more deeper in November. Next slide, please, Robin. So this is just one example. This can be really quick, but this is the ginkgo tree near, if you know, Coffee Sutra or the dollar store, kind of in the mall there across from, I guess, kitty corner to the library there at Front Street and Sunset. This is a great tree. It's not gigantic as far as a ginkgo tree it is, but it is a tree that's probably over 100 years old. It was planted by Issaquah's first mayor, Dot Gibson. And yeah, so it has both the history, even though the diameter of it's only about 3 feet. A lot of our trees are a lot bigger than that, but this is not necessarily a big tree program. That's kind of where we're talking about the heritage. And yeah, so to have that kind of story, working with the Issaquah History Museum on some of these stories. If you all, some of you might know Paul Winterstein, the director there. We've led some kind of both natural, cultural history tours, kind of weaving heritage trees with stories of the early kind of at least European settlers. We'll talk a little bit here about obviously indigenous or Native American history and kind of their huge significance of place on the landscape in what is now Issaquah. But this is a great example of, a tree that has that history, prominent location. It is technically on private property, so the trees are a mix of publicly and privately owned trees. But just, we have slides for all the trees like this, but I just figured I'd put one in there for just kind of an example. And I believe this was actually one of the first nominated and selected for the program in 2005. So just this is a really quick reiteration of the park board role, at least currently, and we don't see this changing dramatically. I think there's going to be some more nuanced process type stuff that we'll discuss more in November, but this is also I would say even a little higher level reminder outside of heritage trees. The park board does serve as our tree board too. And if there's interest, we've had a few fits and starts, and I certainly can be more committed or be providing more opportunities for even an ad hoc committee that talks about tree stuff as a subset of the park board. Brad Book, who's no longer a member, him and I have met on some of that stuff recently. Gosh, I feel like David maybe has been involved with that a little bit too. Zach, when he was on the board, have been folks that have, really kind of been a good sounding board as we kind of work this stuff through and bring it back to the full park board for actual, decisions on some the programmatic elements. So that is a good reminder that, as part of that Trees in USA designation, that we do need to have a tree board, and, that is the park board. And there's a lot of cities that have similar boards and commissions that will serve kind of multiple roles. Maybe not a specifically designated tree board, but like a park board that also carries that responsibility. So I figured that's worth mentioning because maybe a lot of folks aren't aware of that. And then kind of coming back to heritage trees, it's reviewing and recommending, usually coming through me, coming through citizens first, of course. So we're not asking you just to, select them out of thin air. But ultimately the boards does move forward those nominations to the mayor for a mayoral proclamation. And that's ultimately how they get, officially adopted into the heritage tree program. So I have a slide here and a couple that is kind of a flow graph for kind of that process. But those are two just good high level reminders of kind of park board roles as it relates to trees and heritage tree programs specifically. That's one of our, the last slide was one of, sorry, Robin, just to say that's one of our, that's our native Gary oak, kind of right near the fish hatchery. So that tree that almost looks like uprights of a football field or a field goal there is a beautiful Oregon white oak, which we don't have a lot of in Issaquah. So yeah.
How many heritage trees do we have?
So I think technically it's like 26 or 27. Several by that, I think about 3 are dead, but still remnants of them. Like we have a giant cottonwood along the Pickering Reach that just kind of now lays down like this, but that was probably a 5-foot diameter tree that came down to the storm some point in the last couple of decades. We have a cherry tree also near the Pickering barn that stands as a snag, so essentially a dead standing tree, so it still provides habitat. It looks kind of cool, but yeah, there's a few trees that are not technically living that are still posted, and you can still find them, but it feels a little different than obviously living trees like these 3 bur oak trees that are in the Sycamore neighborhood on private property that were probably planted by really, really early Issaquah residents. So yeah, it's in the mid upper 20s. I should say, yes, this program started in 2005, had pretty consistent nominations and selections through about 2012, and has been pretty dormant for the last decade plus. So in that 7 or 8 year period, early on, this is something we'll discuss maybe a little bit tonight, but certainly in November, is the number of trees to nominate. We did have a restriction of 3, just not to let this turn into just like, oh, every tree we think is cool, we want to put in this program. So yeah, at 8 years, about 3 or so tree, yeah, it's in the mid 20s is kind of where we're at. So
another important part of this review is going to be, as we learn, in that 7 year period where all those nominations were coming in, 95% of those nominations were with 1 city staff person. So it wasn't didn't feel like a program that was out there and something that residents felt like they could be part of nominations. So we would like to improve that as part of this.
So I think
process.
The goal is a few process updates for, yes, the nomination selection, but then a big part of it will be, hey, let's roll this out in 2026 as a goal, and how do we better get that word out, better get people. I've had a few people contact me in the meantime, which has been great. We've done some really nice updates to our website to make it look more visual versus this kind of bulleted list that used to exist. But yeah, engaging the public, trying to get them excited about this is definitely a big part. And we kind of want to use some of our big events like Arbor Day, Sustainability Fair in the spring to really kind of advertise that, kind of have nominations. I'll come back to that. That's in a slide here. I do not need to be saying this all right now. So this is, I guess, kind of discussions we had with the park board in the past. And by that, about a year and a half or so ago. One thing that we're really missing is any acknowledgement of tribal history in this program. And we'll see on the next slide how it talks about like early Issaquah settlers. I mean, that's still a really interesting, important part of the history here, but it does kind of talk about this place being like 1880s on. And so culturally modified trees, if people aren't aware of, are trees that were modified by cultural practices by indigenous people. Sometimes that was peeling cedar bark for products. Sometimes that was manipulating branches of trees for wayfinding and route finding. And the more I've kind of learned and talked mainly with staff with the Snoqualmie Indian tribe is that it's not even necessarily the tree itself, even though those trees are likely pretty old because these practices maybe haven't been happening as recently. These trees might be cedar trees that are 75 to 100 years old, but just really what it signifies for place and significance for those families and those tribes. So culturally modified trees, when we started this conversation, there was a lot of interest, like, yes, let's include this in heritage trees. This is a great opportunity to acknowledge and kind of celebrate indigenous history. But the more I've kind of worked with them, they would like to see high-level education around essentially the concept of what culturally modified trees are. But they are a little worried about having individual trees in a publicly available database as it relates to, the negative side would be vandalism or actually destruction of trees, and the other side would be just too much curiosity, too much kind of loving to death, and people trampling in areas where there might not be good trail access or sustainable access. So the strong messages we've had in the last year and a half since this conversation is we want to work together on education really at a high level, but not at an individual tree level. So we still want to weave this into the program details, but it will not be likely that there'll be actually CMTs nominated and selected as heritage trees, and very much wanting to respect and work with the tribes on that. So tree code clarifications, as we talked about Title 18, there's a small added protection for heritage trees once they reach that status. And this was some confusion, and we were kind of working through the 2023 updates as this was being presented. So essentially heritage trees, if they are a nuisance tree, if they are dead, disease, dying, provide a hazard to homes, people, valuable targets, they can be removed. But essentially, as part of development projects, they do have some added protection in there. So that's something that we've been trying to work through is if you have a heritage tree designated on private property, it does limit a little bit what you can necessarily do directly around and with that tree. So how do we, incentivize people to join this program, recognition, plaques, education, kind of celebration of those trees that are on private property, knowing that, that person is taking a little bit of a trade-off on their land there in terms of, having that tree, a little additional protection from, let's say development or redevelopment of that property. So landowners kind of need to know that going in. That's part of the education. Something that was kind of confusing when I first started is like, is that deeded down? And that's been really clear that, you sign off on that as a landowner, but as soon as you want to sell your home or sell your property or something like that, the new owner would have to then, essentially kind of sign off to continue that program. So it's not something that is like in perpetuity necessarily. So that's something that we've clarified, but it's, essentially the tree preservation's there to do that, and heritage trees is really there kind of as that, like I said, education, celebration. But there is, like I said, a little added protection around development projects and heritage trees in our current tree code. So that's something that was a little unclear as that was being developed, but has been kind of something that I've been able to work with our community planning department to just get that clarity on and what that means, from it's not deeded on the property or anything like that. The city can't do that. So that is essentially a owner's decision to have that, nominated and carry that tree on their property with that designation. I mentioned the website updates. So that's just kind of graphically, visually looks a lot better than it did. We didn't really have any photos initially. Tours I mentioned with the Issaquah History Museum. And then, kind of this conversation of, limited individual trees being nominated historically. Is there, and this is kind of a little bit of a just pun, we do not certainly need to use this or do this at all, but like groves of trees or stand of trees. Do we want to have maybe a parallel process that doesn't maybe have that same added level of protection necessarily, but still recognize, celebrates, educates around unique groves or collections of trees? And I have some ideas of what those could look like, but that's part of the kind of conversation a little bit starting tonight, and then certainly moving forward in November too. So I'll try to go, I think I have 2 or 3 more slides. I'll try to go through kind of quickly, but that's kind of recapping. This is essentially what the process looks like right now on our website. This is kind of out of date, having an online form, but it's looking at size or age, historic significance, ecological value. I'll say really quickly, historic significance, a tree that's notable because of its association with early settlers of the region or historic events. So that's where we're saying, tribal history, stuff like that. We want to better weave in there with what is kind of the current historical significance description. And then it's kind of talking about how you can nominate, there's an approval process for the landowner, and then kind of what the heritage tree status looks like. So this is out of date, but this is, essentially what currently exists. So Rob, if you hop to the next one.
That being the brochure sort of confirms it's time to do a little refresh and update.
Yes. This is, essentially what I just kind of called out, looking at specimens for the size of trees, but I've had some really good feedback just talking to Brad Book recently, other folks. It's like, this shouldn't be purely a big tree program. We should be celebrating older trees that might not get to that size, or trees that have, maybe importance in ecological settings. Like I can think of cottonwood trees that bald eagles nest in annually near the farmer's market. They may not be that different than other cottonwood trees, but that kind of gets to the ecological value one there. This is essentially just kind of focusing in on those 3 existing categories for nominations, which open a conversation. This is pretty typical for a lot of these programs. I think we're not necessarily looking at creating new categories, but we can have that conversation. But it's like, how do we kind of tweak, update, and adjust these a little bit for the program here? And then I think this is the last kind of slide of content next. This is essentially kind of what we had started to propose for a process is, having spring kind of outreach, Arbor Day event, sustainability, which is usually a sustainability fair in April. So having about a 3-month rollout, April, May, June, where we're, really trying to, encourage the community to submit nominations. Something that I would review kind of initially, put together little reports, do tree health assessments. If trees are on their last legs, maybe that's not the appropriate tree for a heritage tree program. Kind of working with Jeff on director level approval for public trees, but for private trees, that would obviously be the homeowner. I mean, someone can nominate a tree on someone else's private property, but it needs to be signed off on by that landowner. So that's kind of the blue bubble to the side there. Coming back to the park board in September with a presentation. The number of 3, we can talk about that, but we're maybe looking at still keeping this a little bit selective in terms of how many nominations move forward to approve trees to a fall council meeting where the mayor declares the heritage tree status, and then it goes to the project map website, and that really how do we build the public facing, the outreach, the programs, little plaques, little identifiers, things like that people can walk through. The best email I got recently was from a mom whose 7-year-old daughter loves trees and asked to have map more details when they want to visit all the heritage trees. And unless that they're designated or go to our website and have heard presentations like this, you might see a tree and not know that it's part of this program. And to me, that was just really awesome for something that is a bit dormant to have someone reach out, try to get more information, and just say, hey, my young kid really wants to see all those heritage trees. So to me, it's like, how do we get more of that out of this program? So that's essentially not something we're asking to vote on. We can certainly discuss it a little bit as you all want to tonight. But I think, Robin, the next slide kind of addresses some questions kind of related to process, some kind of higher level questions. And essentially, this is the end of the presentation. And up to y'all how much you really want to dive into this right now versus kind of knowing that this is going to be the kind of focus of the November meeting. But, kind of talking about that process on the last slide, which we can always go back to. How do we continue to publicize this program once we kind of settle in on some updates to the process? How do we communicate the intent of the program around education, celebration, community engagement? And then kind of this separate category distinction, what do we do for stands of trees, groves of trees? For instance, those are 3 Douglas firs at Lower Hillside Cemetery that are each nominated individually. So that's not considered a stand. Those are 3 standalone heritage trees that just happen to be part of a grove there at the cemetery. So I'll stop there and see if anyone has any thoughts or just kind of general questions. And also knowing that, yes, this is kind of the starting point of this and really trying to come back to this with a bit more depth and detail in November.
So would this now be an appropriate time to kind of address the question that was presented by Connie? Because, this is what we're talking about, and she just has a question about whether a community member can nominate a publicly owned tree without specific authorization by the city.
So I think, do you want to?
Oh, go ahead.
I think what Connie's asking, I think the crux of Connie's question is, So yes, anyone can nominate a tree, but then who has authority to approve that nomination to move forward through a review through myself, the park board, and ultimately to the mayor? So I think that's where Connie would like to see more ownership of the community. You know, her kind of philosophy is these are publicly owned and managed trees, but also there's a lot of us that are thinking through a lot of considerations of public use and park use and, you know, kind of wanting to make sure that both they fit the intent of the program and, you know, as we talk about, you know, Tibbetts Valley Park is where this came up is, you know, kind of what implications designation would have for, like I said, future park use and development too. So, yes, so to answer the question, and that's what she was kind of challenging when she did this a while ago and in her email was that, you know, nominating it's one thing, but then I think she would like to see that just kind of go straight through the review approval process with the park board and not necessarily be something that either Jeff's signing off on, I'm signing off on. I think that's kind of the crux of what she's.
So
Yeah,
the
if I-
tree-
Sorry.
I was just gonna, you know, going back to her email, so she was saying that her applications for those trees were rejected, but and was there like, I don't remember, was it something we discussed as a board?
Yeah, we did discuss it. We did discuss it. And absolutely, I think she brings up a great question. I think as we review this process, we absolutely want to encourage more community involvement. We want residents to submit nominations. We don't want it to be like it was for the first 7 years of really just being a single staff person doing this. So we very much want to invite that. I would say we very much as a department echo the sentiment that we're stewards of your park system. This isn't our park system. I think where we would want to clarify and play a role and think it's important that if it is a nomination on a city park or city property, it's not that we're trying to control the nomination. We want to inform you. We want, you know, to have an urban forest supervisor and a park planning manager have a chance to say, hey, here's something on the park CIP that we need to be thinking of with this nomination. Hey, here's the condition of that tree. It's in its last 5 years of life, or, you know, to be able to bring that information to you to think about. So much like that nomination, we didn't keep that nomination from, we had that conversation and said, hey, the you know, what Connie was suggesting, I think it's a very valuable collection of trees, is all the London pines that line Tibbetts Valley Park, a really prominent stand of trees. Ultimately, and it kind of leads to the discussion, is we didn't move forward with recommending it because we didn't have a way of nominating a whole stand of trees. That's not something that's in the program. And so, not to make an excuse for it, but I guess just responding that I don't think we're in a place of much difference with Connie. We would agree that we want community-led nominations. We think vetting them is important. We want to vet them. We don't want to hide them from you. Hey, here's all the nominations we received. Here's our position, or here's what's happening within that park, or maybe happening within that park. Here's the condition of that tree. We want to be able to inform you.
So going forward, I mean, I guess, is that still in the conversation for her to renominate those? Or I guess I like, have we decided that because we don't have a way for a person to nominate those many trees, that we're not doing it? Or I guess just like to answer her questions, like, okay, how do we move forward to kind of get kind of a balance to answer what she's asking for?
Yeah, we'd either need to dramatically expand the number of nominees per year, because there's probably 30 to 40 London plane trees along that stretch of Newport, and then it wraps around, I believe that's 12th Avenue there too. That's where we kind of proposing. There are other cities that do, you know, kind of groves of trees. And then, yeah, what is the level of, does that get the same, you know, development protection, or is that just purely an educational way to celebrate these kind of unique collections or stands of trees? So that's I think where the last question or bullet point there is getting at. Are these kind of parallel processes where they're not maybe technically designated heritage trees, but we're still kind of celebrating and kind of putting that out there. And then, yeah, because if not, if we're going the kind of adjusting the number, I mean, that pretty dramatically alters the program, but that's something too that's certainly up for conversation. But
Yeah, would love discussion tonight. Like we said, I think November as we start bringing together a draft. We're not expecting to bring a draft in November and have you adopt it. Much like our typical process, we'd love to bring a draft, discuss it, vet it, get your thoughts before we're taking any sort of final action on it. But as Dan said, we want to put our heads together and then present something to you and discuss with you how do we deal with these stands of trees and groves of trees versus individual trees? Yeah. So more to come.
Hannah has her.
yeah.
Hey, Anna.
Hey guys, one of my questions, and this is moving off of the Grove question and kind of the process and more about kind of looking at the questions that are on the slide and just something that came up in my mind. As part of the nomination process and part of these heritage trees, do they get named, right? Like, do we say this is, I can't think of a name of a tree right now because my brain is not totally there, but do they get special names as a way to kind of help, for example, children relate to them, right? To kind of give them an identity that's really relatable. And I don't know, I think that would help with this intent and also with the connection with the community, but also kind of a side question.
That's an awesome question. I think that's exactly how do we make this more engaging? How do we celebrate this more? So to answer your question, it's no. Right now, it's very much the common names that are given to them. Douglas fir, giant sequoia, large-leaf magnolia, some of the different ones we have in our program. So they're very much through the kind of botanical, just naming conventions. But I think that's really, really cool. It could be a great way that we could promote them, and yeah, especially talking about youth education and engagement too. And maybe there's even a process where people can give them. And it's funny you say that because often when we're planting little trees with kids, it's like, hey, name the tree, and we get some of the silliest fun answers. But it's a great way to kind of feel ownership of like, hey, I am planting this. I am hopefully giving this tree decades or even centuries of life. And so yeah, some of the kind of names we come up with are really, really fun. But that's a great suggestion. I think kind of sort of talking about this two-part, yeah, we're really trying to kind of pin down the process, pin down some of these parameters, and then once we feel good moving forward with that, then how do we continue to make this more engaging and kind of fun with the public. And those
The
are
public facing side and a map and a tour and tours. Yep.
Oh. I mean, this is actually just to add to Hannah and say that I do think that's a really good, the names, or at least just really giving them a focus, is a very good idea. And that my experience, like I'm with my kids, I'm at the troll all the time, and I just see people come. They've clearly been doing the maps of looking at all the trolls around the PMW or whatever. And obviously, this is not to that extent, but that having that kind of focus, that identity, that specific thing you are after, that's really clearly marked and has a moment, it really works. Kids, adults, everybody really loves that. So I think the idea of a name or any other way to really identify them, I think is a really good idea and really encouraging for this program.
Yeah, no, thank you, Paul. I think having similar to the troll, there's that rock with the little kind of square plate that has the number, has Jacob 2 trees. I think that'd be a great way we could both have the actual plant name or tree name, if we want to give it a personal name, and then kind of maybe a number, so if people want to go collect or visit all the heritage trees, at least the ones that are truly publicly accessible. A few of them are in people's backyards, so you have to get permission and stuff. But I think that's a great idea. So that's where really, really looking forward to like these, ways to better promote the program once we, like I said, kind of finalize some of the process stuff here over hopefully the fall and winter with I'll say my personal goal of really trying to kind of launch that kind of type of outreach in the spring.
Is your question regarding like groves of trees or collections of trees or small batch of trees, whatever you want to call it, I don't think I necessarily see an issue with having that as a change to the program, from a standpoint of the sheer number of trees. But I think it's still the onus or the expectation of the submitter would be that you still have to show or explain why that entire collection of trees meets the criteria for why the entire collection of trees should be designated heritage. Versus if you're pointing out, this is the oldest, largest specimen, or this tree is super unique to this area, and or the bald eagles, it's not a tree, but the Tibbetts Valley Central Light Pole that has, a branch for like 7 years in a row or whatever now on it. Like, if you could say, this is why I believe this grove of trees is significant specimen, historical, whatever, then I think that still fills the criteria. But it also kind of changes the bar for the person submitting of that. That's a much larger burden of proof, almost, if you will, to say that it's not just this one tree. It is this all 40 of these trees.
Yeah.
I'm telling you are important in this way. And I think it's as a group, if we were the ones to sit and review those nominations, that's a much more burden of proof for us to pick if it's 3 trees or a collection as one of your submissions.
Yeah.
Is you can easily be like, well, this one tree, you can clearly say X, Y, Z. Whereas this 40 trees, half of them are your end of life, or et cetera. I think that I don't see the problem with the submittal part of it. I think it's just that you really want to submit something that you feel though would fit all those things. It's a little hard to review or hard to challenge. On your post as the program to residents, I don't remember exactly where it was, but I was in the car with my children earlier today, and I heard you can get Issaquah donating a tree to you. So wherever that sign was, that works great. For the previous program, they discussed it.
Sign, the yard signs.
Yeah, your yard sign at the minimum is working.
Yeah.
So even something like that for a heritage tree or something that is near those high traffic areas, like the one by Issaquah Coffee or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it can be something you have a tree you're proud of or excited about, here's this program. No, it can be as simple as that. You're right. And actually, it's been great to see the people that have been requesting trees say how they heard about the program. And so far, it's like 50% plus from those yard signs.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Thanks, Ryan.
Awesome. Dan, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Thanks for your great work. Thanks for your feedback, everybody. Again, I appreciate the discussion. Like we said, we look forward from a Heritage Tree standpoint of bringing something in November so we can really start diving into some specifics and look to ideally adopt something beginning of next year so that we can sort of start that first cycle of this renewed program in the spring.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time tonight.
Excellent. Yes, as said, thank you very much. I do believe our next piece of business, Parks and Community Services, Summer Highlights 2025.
Yeah.
Who's there?
Thanks for that, Jeff. Ryan, thank you. Looking at time, I look forward to giving this presentation. We'll try not to go too long. I had the pleasure of providing this update to City Council earlier this month on September 2nd. Just so excited to do the best I can to give an overview of what this department did this summer. This department continues to do amazing work. And one of the phrases we use a lot in the department is, hey, community just happened. Hey, community's happening. When we think about our programs, when we think about condition of parks, when you see how spaces are being used, when you see how community events are happening, and just that ability and that recognition that we can do a lot to help foster community in Issaquah. That's really meaningful work to us. And not to get too sappy, but in, I think, a day and age and a time right now when there's so much uncertainty internationally, nationally, locally, the more community we can foster in Issaquah, that's helpful. So with that, why don't we jump in? I kind of did this division by division. I'm going to start with the divisions you probably are most familiar with. So I'll go relatively quick and then jump into some of our recreation teams that also have done some great work. You're familiar with a lot of this work. You were very much part of this as we did public engagement for Hillside, completed that, cut a ribbon. Great work by Robin managing that project. And then lo and behold, we also completed Pedestrian Park and Senior Center Plaza. What a fun event. So fun to see the community beginning to embrace and just get familiar with those re-energized spaces. Again, Robin, outstanding work managing a very complex project. Anytime you do urban work, right? Hillside Park was complex. Anytime you do work in an urban area, it's that much more complicated. And so great work there. Some acquisition news. You know that we're hard at work with an acquisition strategy. You're familiar, earlier this spring, City Council approved a 17-acre purchase and sale agreement on 17 acres. We call it Kalkari 3. It was a planned third phase of a development project on the sort of lower side of Squawk Mountain, just off of Sunrise. But we just got news we applied for. It was a $2.5 million acquisition that we're set to close on early next year. We have received $2 million in grant funding. So again, our strategy of being really aggressive with grant funding, leveraging our local dollars with grant dollars to stretch our acquisitions. Some great news, great work there. And then we're estimating we're going to be going out to bid next week as we finalize some of our permitting questions with the dog park and look forward to hopefully being under construction this fall. Yeah, park operations. So our park operations team always hard at work throughout the year. Summer's an incredibly busy time for them. You often don't see the magnitude of their work in data, but when you look at the acres of turf, this is literally a big backyard that team maintains. When you look at 53 acres of turf, 7.2 acres of landscaping beds that we're stewarding, again, owned by all the residents of Issaquah and maintained by that team. 13,000 bags of trash collected year to date. We like that data. We like a lot of trash. Not that we're big fans of trash, but that tells us our parks are being used, our trails are being used, our public spaces are being used. So really, really important. A lot of dog lovers and dog owners in this community. When you think of the volume of doggy bags that our doggy stations go through. Over 250 picnic shelter rentals. And that's just our shelter rental season, which is the summer, or basically May through September. All other times, our shelters are obviously available for anyone to use on a drop-in basis. Lake Sam State Park, I'll give a little bit more detailed update under the director's report, but we are well on our way. We have a signed agreement. We've begun maintenance. Soccer's already begun. Cricket pitches have been put in, and cricket is going to begin this weekend. Team has led some tree replacement projects, both at Central Park. Confluence Park was really our first step to bomb cyclone impacts. It might be interesting. I don't know if you're nerd out on data, but I'd love to bring a map as we've mapped the damage of the bomb cyclone. It's fascinating. It's literally a strip that went from sort of the I-90 corridor. If you think of all the damage on the Sunset Trailhead, through Confluence Park, right through Newport, it's fascinating to see where and how that damage sort of mapped through town. Some drainage improvements at the community center lawn were well appreciated and loved. The upper left-hand corner, just in time for concerts, which ends up becoming the dance area. It held up really, really well, far better than it has in prior years. Than our just some annual maintenance with playgrounds and et cetera. So hardworking team. Next one, Dan really highlighted much of this, so I will jump past this one. Really duplicates a lot of what Dan and our natural resource team have done. Again, just what they're leveraging is amazing. Our human services team, a really, really important part of the department. Obviously not something we talk a lot about. We do residually. There is a human services commission that Brenda and Hannah and our behavioral health team work really closely with. They're doing amazing work. And I think the value of having human services in our parks and community services department is those adjacencies, not only to our recreation facilities, but our parks and park ownership. The behavioral health and homeless outreach program that we've been able to put together is pretty amazing for a town of our size. And that's thanks to really great work by Alex, our park ranger, by our behavioral health staff, by some really key relationships that both of those groups have with our police department. Some really impactful, positive work has happened. Doesn't mean homelessness is gone. We as a city are never going to solve homelessness on our own, but I think we really want to respond to that situation in as positive a way as we can.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
It's all
I
right.
didn't see the picnic party. How did the roller skating thing go?
Oh,
Is that coming later?
it's coming later,
Okay,
but it's going light.
Wait, okay,
It's
sorry.
going, and it's all good. It's going light. It's going great. Gangbusters. That Pickering Barn sign is a community clothing event that our human services team did with our, again, adjacencies with the recreation staff to house that at Pickering Barn. Huge support, huge number of donations from residents. Another event's going to be coming up this October. Culture Fest occurred at the beginning of September. Doubled our participation in that event this last year, really becoming a great event that the community embraces. Arts, another group that has the Arts Commission. I know we've had our joint meeting earlier this year. Amy Dukes, our arts manager, just does an amazing job and such a key part of our team. I think what's happened at Pedestrian Park is a great example of the adjacency of Robin and Amy working so closely together and actually incorporating art early in a design and early in a park project of that scale. I think has really produced more meaningful art and not just plop art that feels like it just suddenly shows up. The upper left is an aerial. If you haven't been by the Three Trails intersection on Gilman, the mural has been painted. Hopefully you've seen that. We have a consensus with Public Works on some markings that we're going to have on the crossings themselves within the right of way. Working with Public Works on getting that done. But between the art and the crossing designations, it's really going to make a big difference. And I think pedestrians feeling super safe and understanding sort of their intuitive connections there. Big Shakespeare in the Park event. Issaquah Film Festival. I don't know if you're any film fans here, but that's become a really great event. First time we partnered with Issaquah School District and we're able to use the Performing Arts Center. That's a partnership we want to further expand so the community can have access to that Performing Arts Center. Familiar with obviously the public art that was at part of Pedestrian Park. Next slide. Now jumping into really our recreation team and just amazing work by all the divisions within our community center team. They really spearhead our summer camp program, them and the athletics teams. We had over 1,200 registrations and participants of our summer day camps. What we did this summer was, I think, really substantial. For the last couple of years, we've had such an extensive wait list. We've had registration day for day camps, I think can be maybe some of the most stressful days for parents in town, and we don't necessarily like that. Camps were filling up that fast. Camps fill up really fast. We can't totally control that, but what the team did is really looked at what are the key targeted age groups that we really need to try and add capacity to. And we added a substantial amount of capacity to camps, and community responded and certainly filled those spots. You'll see a thread through a number of these recreation updates. Teen employment is a really, really big thing to us. We're a first-time employer for many. We're probably the largest teen employer in town when you look at what we do with camps and athletic programs and the pool, et cetera. So 39 teens and young adults worked at day camp. We take that reality that this is their first job really, really seriously. They're likely going to turn pro in something else. They're going to have a career in something else. But the leadership that's learned through being a camp leader or being a referee or being a lifeguard can be carried through their whole life. I think I've shared this. The mayor is proud to say her first job as a 15-year-old was a lifeguard. And that led to her being an amazing engineer and an amazing mayor. Just one example. I was a flag football referee for Kent Parks as I was growing up, and the things I learned there have carried me a long ways. STEAM camps is our creative way of adding arts to STEM. So these are our science, tech, and math camps, but as well as arts. Lots of great enrollment there. Huge enrollment in our sports camp programs. Many of those sports camps are contracted camps that we're contracting with a third-party provider. But again, huge numbers this year. A lot of happy families and happy participants. Vets, not short on those. The Issaquah Kids Triathlon was back. Largest attendance with over 250 kiddos swimming, biking, and running around the community center lawn and using the Julius Bone Pool. Just a great event and a partnership we do with the Youth Advisory Board. 4th of July, we took a little softer touch with the parade and a community picnic following the parade. I don't know if any of you attended that, but it was a great afternoon. Great event. You see the photo there in the lower right, extremely well attended. Next year is America 250. It's the 250th. There's a name for it. I'm not going to try. 200 was easy. It was the bicentennial. It's a much fancier name for 250. But I know Issaquah is going to look forward to celebrating that next year as well. Concerts, record attendance, literally record attendance this year to those 8 events. Along with the longstanding partnership we have with Kiwanis, we partnered with Rotary in doing food collection at a number of those events. Over 2,000 pounds were collected in a great way to support the food bank. The photo that you'll see there is the last concert was, oh my goodness, Red Karma. Am I getting that name right? A Taylor Swift cover. Just say we had a very young audience there, a lot of young girls and a lot of screaming, and just a great atmosphere, great environment. Adaptive recreation. You might recall post-COVID, as we began to sort of rethink staffing, and as revenues were coming back, we reimagined staffing a little bit, and for the first time hired an exclusive adaptive recreation coordinator, whereas before our adaptive programs were done by many staff. Callie Weber is our adaptive recreation coordinator. She has just done an amazing job and has allowed us to really, I think, focus on adaptive programs, how we integrate those programs into our other programs, whether it's day camp programs, summer concerts on the green. We partner with Tavon and allow many of our adaptive participants to come and enjoy the concerts. Not a separate concert, but it's awesome. Thank you, Martha. Totally agree. So great work by Callie and the community center team that supports her. Senior Center continues to thrive and grow. Trips have always been extremely popular. 111 or 111 new members. At the senior center tells us even in the summer months, we're seeing more people coming to the senior center wanting to be part of what's happening and going on. Kirsten May, who's our supervisor there, began a veterans breakfast that's been really popular and just a great way to partner with our veterans and the local VFW. You're familiar, obviously, if you were there at the ribbon cutting for the Senior Center Plaza, how meaningful it was to the veterans that along with that plaza project, we were able to really open up and I think invite the community to see the memorial there in front of the senior center in new ways. Fitness classes continue to be really popular. Athletics group doing amazing work. Gliders, track and field, and gliders cross country, which happens in the fall, continues to grow. Again, record participation we're seeing in that program, as that's a number of years old now. Tomorrow night, if you happen to be going by Tibbetts Valley Park, we call it Friday Night Lights. We're hosting a cross country meet under the lights. So kiddos will be running through Tibbetts Valley Park, having a fun meet under the lights. Huge teen employer with our athletics program, over 70 plus teens employed through all the programs that they do, whether that's gliders, camps, classes, etc. Some new programming the team has done. Ball hockey at the community center has been a huge hit. Maybe that's having an NHL team locally. Hockey seems to be certainly catching stronger interest. Some large tournaments we hosted at Tibbetts Valley Park and Central Park. Something we want to continue to try and foster, just given how that not only is a great way to use the parks, but is a great economic development incubator as well. The pool, certainly not last but least, huge number of swim lessons. The volume of work and the volume of participation and the volume of use that goes through that little pool on the hill is mind-boggling. Katie, I know you are a frequent user and have a young swimmer. Zach and the team do some amazing work. Some new programs that we've begun to incorporate. Water polo is beginning to take off with 41 participants in classes this summer. We've also started a junior lifeguard program. We're always looking for new ways of just engaging youth in this community, but helping to foster, we're going to be a lifeguard employer as long as we have a pool. So getting that interest, I think, again, the leadership that kids learn through what lifeguarding means and represents. We just think that's a great program to foster. There's that teen employment again. Over 85 teens are employed at the pool, either as lifeguards or lesson instructors. Zach and team, again, take that very seriously. And it's not only a key part of offering a quality program, but again, we hope that those teams are taking a lot more than just a paycheck away from the years that they're doing that work. Pickering Barn. Hey, look, they're skating. Jeff, great question. I'll pop to that at the end. Yes, the rock and roll at the rink is proving to be very popular. The partners we're working with have been excited to do that incorporation with Farmers Market. They've been maxing out their session registrations. With market ending this Saturday, we're looking to continue to partner with them to make sure there's access, some evening use and other uses throughout the winter. Rock and roll rink will be part of our Boo at the Barn festival at the end of October. So that's been a great partnership and a great relationship that we hope, I think is a great example of how a community space can incubate business. I know this is a group that would love to find a permanent rink, and we would love to help them see that through. And if that rink happened to be in Issaquah, we think it'd be a great asset for this community. So exciting. Numbers at the farmer's market, we had record numbers last year. We've broken those record numbers from last year. So this market truly has become a really special place, and great work by Kella, Diane, and the team. So that's a super fast overview of a great summary. I hope you recognize this photo. This is our group shot from Hillside Park. And this phrases something really meaningful for us as a department. We had, in fact, had our city all staff meeting, and I reminded the whole city staff of what we're about in Parks and Community Services. And we really, everything we do boils down to one of these two core values. We invest in your public spaces owned by the residents of Issaquah, and we invest in people through programs and services. So that's a summer. Now we go into fall.
Thank you.
Good job.
Do you have questions about anything that we just saw? Follow up? Huh?
I feel like question I would have, Jeff, is there like any big challenges, any big learnings, anything that just, wow, that didn't work, or boy, we should have considered this, or.
Yeah, great question. I think anytime at all, yes, there are a number of programs that we continually evaluate. We talk a lot as a team. Any program, even the most successful ones, have a life cycle. And you either need to, as that life cycle begins to decline, sort of reinvent the program, or maybe it's time to dismount and offer something new. So you're right. I listed, hey, there's some new programs that we're offering in athletics. There's some other things that we've sort of let go of. I think our mix of recreation programs are constantly evolving and need to constantly be evolving. I think department-wide, yeah, we're constantly challenged. We're challenged with resources, and I don't mean to say what was us, but we are, we did all this work through some budget reductions that needed to be made, that the city needed to be made. So we needed to be really thoughtful. I want to make sure we talk a lot as a leadership team that we're not burning staff out. We're not being so ambitious with a work plan that it's not sustainable. We're constantly bumping up against that. Again, I don't say that as a negative, but it's just a operational challenge and a reality that we need to make. I think on the park planning side, we've had to readjust this. Cutting this many ribbons has been years in the making, and even in itself, it's been really hard. And I say this to you. I think you all know this, but we went from 2 park planners to 1 park planner. As we now venture off into doing master planning for Tibbetts Valley Park and Central Park and the number of things in our capital plan, we're going to be really cognizant of it might not be at a rate and a pace that everyone wants. That quite frankly, we even want, but we need to be really realistic and practical in understanding that work is important. That work takes time and energy, and we can only go at the resource pace, or the pace that our resources allow. So not a whine, just something, yeah. Work on, yeah. Like Parks and Recreation professionals, we are masters of taking a full-time job and doubling it. I think like anybody, right? I mean, we're not the only ones, but we really to try and be cognizant of our working within our resources.
I think it sounds like it was a successful summer.
Anybody else have any questions or feedback or? All right, well, that will move on from regular business to reports. You get to keep talking with the director's report.
All right. Yeah, first, just again, a few further comments on Lake Seminole State Park. Again, for something that came up on our work plan, wasn't on our work plan in last fall, but became a strategic moment that we really needed to take action. Um, Really appreciate the conversations that we had with you that really helped shape how we frame that agreement with state parks. We now have a signed agreement with them, as I said. Maintenance and scheduling has already begun on the site. Exciting to see how Cricket is going to begin using it. We've also worked with the state park on the parking lot. I know many of you have probably driven into that over your years and know that feels like a craters of the moon kind of experience. And so thanks to partnering with Public Works, we are going to be working with state parks to do some maintenance improvements on the parking lot. So that should be coming a little bit later this fall, but we really look forward to seeing how use looks. The agreement itself, much like we talked about, it is an 18-month agreement. So this is a short-term agreement that gets us through the end of next year, gives us this year to sort of test it, trial it, see how the community is using it. At the same time, as I said, the state park is going to be doing their management plan update for the entirety of the park. So we will sometime next year be bringing back to you and having the conversation of, hey, how did it go? How did we see the community using this as we start fleshing out and thinking of the 2027, 2028 budget? We want to begin preparing that conversation with City Council. What is this? What does our role look like in 2027 and beyond? So I think we're set up really, really well. I'm glad we didn't do a long-term agreement. I'm glad we didn't try and map this out and understand what the long-term implications are going to be. This gives us a chance to again, test it, live with it for a little while, and then go from there. So excited. And again, thank you for your support in moving so quickly on that the strategic moment that came up that I think we all agree and felt like we needed to act to make sure those fields still had community use. The exciting thing is, and I've shared this multiple times, I'll share it with you. For the first time, those fields have access to the whole community and not just one soccer club. And I think we all agree that's really, really meaningful. That's public fields. Those are public fields that having multiple sports and multiple sports groups and even just the community when the field's up in use can go utilize those fields. So exciting. One other update I have, I'm going to be talking about something that isn't necessarily managed by us, but I just want to give you all a heads up. Are you familiar with PFAS? PFAS is one of those forever chemicals that, if you recall, a number of years ago was Issaquah really has taken a lead, recognized PFAS in its water supply. This was a number of years ago now. Since, I think it's certainly been understood that pretty much every city in the country has some degree of PFAS, given the proliferation of PFAS that's happened really throughout the world and around this country. A lot of that PFAS work focused on water quality. The reason I'm bringing this up is this next step that Public Works is working on with the Department of Ecology. They've been looping us in that they're now going to be looking at ecology, trying to better understand PFAS in the soil and what that means. So not just in the water supply, but the soil. Later this fall and in October, there's going to be some community awareness and community information that's going to be going out by Public Works and by Ecology about some of the sites that we're going to be doing some testing on. A couple of those are park sites. Park sites that happen to coincide with where a lot of the origins of this PFAS here in Issaquah were the foam, the fire foam that was tested. A lot of that was tested sort of where fire stations were. So coincidentally, the fire station near Memorial Field, there's a lot of foam that was sprayed out onto a certain section of Memorial Field. So there's going to be some test pits. We want to better understand what those volumes are and what it really means for having that chemical, not just in water, but in soil. All the water level testing of PFAS has been deemed to be really super minimal here in Issaquah. So I don't mean to bring this up as a huge alarm, but being better informed is really, really important. So there's going to be some testing going on at Memorial Field. There's also going to be some testing along a really small portion of the Rainier Trail, right in front of what's known as City Hall South. City Hall South happened to be a fire station before it was the city council chambers. So again, there was probably some foam that was tested right there in that lawn area by Rainier Trail. So both of those areas are really, really important. There's some other testing sites that'll be happening around town. Those park areas aren't the only ones, but I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that as you start to see and the community starts to get information on that. That's all I have.
That's great. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Excellent. Next up would be our youth representatives report. Oh, Hannah.
Oh, I just wanted to take a moment. I probably should have said something after the summer update. But just to say like how amazing I think all of the work that everyone has done this summer has been. And I just wanted to pass that on from my community. I've heard of like so many wonderful comments about our parks department and also about like the summer concerts and everything. Before I forgot, I just wanted to make that comment of praise and yeah, just say thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Hannah. I will pass that on to the team.
Yes, thank you. As noted that we don't have a youth representative here tonight. Do we have a youth representative?
Yeah, I will check with the youth advisory. I'll check with Kathy Jones of the community center who oversees the youth advisory board. Yeah, it's a new school year, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is usually the time.
Excellent. I do not have a chairperson report. I have a chairperson challenge. And that is, we've been informed and notified that in November, we're going to discuss the heritage tree program in further detail. So my challenge is everyone get out, see a heritage tree. When you're out walking your dog, when you're out bicycling around town, when you're out walking one of our parks or open spaces or downtown, look around, look at things you wouldn't normally look at trees in a different light and see if there's something that we can bring back to the table in 2 meetings.
That's awesome.
Does anyone have any items they wish to bring up or discuss that were not on the agenda? Okay. I guess with that, I don't remember what our next meeting is because I didn't look at it before. But it'll be in the minutes.
October 27th.
Thank you. And with that, no further business. At 8:39, this meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Oh, we didn't see your kiddos at all.
She went off. She said hello, went off camera.
Oh,
Yeah, I turned off when I went to deal with that.
All right. Have a great night.
Good night, everybody.
Anybody want to speak for the rest?
Yeah, I'll go.
Yeah, here you go. Please take one of your family. Tommy does it.
They're gonna keep the meeting.
Oh,
There you go.
I just saw Seahawks go